Okay. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Um, insane day yesterday. If anybody watched Morning Market Prep, we absolutely top ticked our high of day and had a ridiculously powerful downtrend yesterday. I don't think we had a green candle in like uh, 90 minutes after we tapped our 90.25 to 96 zone. So, for anybody who was in prep yesterday, studying with us yesterday, congratulations if you caught those shorts. Um, really incredible day. So, today we have a new day ahead of us, and it looks like it could be very good. We've had wonderful volatility so far, which is great news to see, and pretty excited to see what kind of opportunity we have today. But one of the things I want to talk about before we do go into anything too crazy is what kind of data do we have? So we didn't have too much last night. We had like a actually we had a Fed speaker talk like really early in the morning, which I thought was kind of weird. He was talking at 5:30, which was this huge candle, which makes me wonder if he said something crazy. I don't really know why we had such a dramatic move up about an hour ago. So I'll look into that if there was any like news or something. But at 9:45 this morning, we do have our manufacturing PMI, which this data is on schedule. Like this isn't data that's like really old, for example. But basically, um, that's our purchasing manager index. So it looks at kind of like goods of sales and prices and things like that. So we'll see if we've had industry expansion or contraction there in about 15 minutes after open. And then we do have some consumer sentiment this morning, as well as wholesale inventories, which that wholesale inventories number is an old one that should have came out in October. So we're going to be seeing that. So there's some data this morning that can cause a little bit of extra volatility, which is good to see. All right, so we violently top ticked yesterday. Let's see if we can get some crazy levels today. So let's hop into fractals and see what we have ahead of us. So we are currently trading at 65.9550 on ES. So let's go into our wave one daily. 65.95. Okay, so we're currently trading just a little bit above our pivot, and we are a little bit above our vector here at 65.86. You can see here we have our open state at 65.99, which we're going to ignore because it's the open state that we're currently making. Um, there's really not too much on the Wave 1 daily. We pushed down so hard after tapping our open state on the Wave 1 daily yesterday, that was right here. Um, was that here? Yeah. No, that wasn't here. I thought we had a Wave 1 daily yesterday, but anyway. Um, we after we did tap some open states yesterday, we had this really aggressive push down, which was really good to see. But wave one daily doesn't look too promising, right? Like we've been technically consolidating, and on this particular chart, we're even below our 80% odds. So to be totally honest, I think we have room to the upside and room to the downside on ES this morning. So not seeing too much that tells us, high probability bounce or rejection areas on this particular chart. You could technically argue that if we do revise below pivot, we could try to look for some sort of opportunity to the downside for some type of open state. Oh, excuse me, guys. Happy Friday. I am tired. We could look for the downside for some sort of open state, but as of now, there's nothing super telling on the wave one daily. So let's try to zoom in a little bit. Okay. So the 7 wave 60. Let's see what we got here. Maybe. Here we go. Okay. So on our 7 wave 60, we've pushed up pretty well, past our 50% odds, but we still do have quite a bit of room to the upside here. One of the things that I think is worth noting is that from last night, we had this really aggressive push down. Um, didn't really respect pivot too much, or sorry, our vector too much. We kind of tested a little bit here, broke above it, and then had this pretty strong move up. And then you'll notice here that our vector was really disrespected here from about, what is this? About midnight last night, all the way until 7 a.m. today when we had that big candle back to the upside. And so, um, kind of a similar story as yesterday. I don't know if I really want to trust vector. especially because it was so messy on the 7 wave 60. We've seen this kind of 2 days in a row. Haven't really seen a clear trend on the 7 wave 60. So any sort of vector touches that we do get on the 7 wave 60, I'll be very cautious of today until we start forming some type of realistic trend, essentially. But looking at our open states, we are above our 50% odds. We had this open state made at 65.99, which is what we made just this morning. We do have an opportunity up here at 66.18, and then something all the way up here at 66.53, which would get us pretty overextended because we'd be past our 10% odds. But so far, there's potentially some opportunity at 66.18. That gives me a little bit of pause, just because we're actually not that far away from it. And I know we do have quite a bit of range on ES today. I know that we're pretty close to the top of our average range, but our IV walls are posting kind of near like 66 like 55 to 66.70. So um 66.18 feels a little bit soon. There could be a potential rejection there. I kind of like the 66.53 because that does technically get us up to our IV walls if we do take that. So let's keep in the back of our minds 18 and 53 and see if we have any other levels on some of our smaller time frames. Okay, so let's go into our 20 wave. Okay, so here we go. We're looking a little bit more overextended on some of our mid to lower time frames, which I like to see. So we have 66.05 and 66.10 are 20 and 10% odds. Notice here that we have a huge amount of blank space, basically up to that 66.58, which could look pretty probability for a nice rejection. Um, we're not really seeing any confluence with that 15 area that we saw on our 7 wave 60. So I'm kind of having a little bit more confidence in that 58 zone, which again, that seems really far away, but we've already had pretty close to an 80-point range on ES overnight. It wouldn't be terribly surprising to see us go, a little bit higher, or even a little bit lower based on how we've kind of traded during ETH. But again, similar story to the 7 wave 60. The 20 wave 15, pretty disrespected on vector, right? We had this pretty obvious break above vector after this really nice strong downtrend, revision up well above our 50% odds. And then even though vector did technically have a little bit of a downtrend on the 20 wave 15, look at how disrespected it was. It's just like above it, below it, above it, below it. Revision to below pivot. We respected it for a minute here, but then again, kind of above and below without too much respecting of like even initial rejections off of it. So I'm going to continue to ignore vector until we do see some type of clear trend start to play and see um, some type of support or resistance on it. Because again, something I know I want to remind the team of. Yesterday we did ignore vector, but when we did take this rejection up here, we did technically watch like some of our more larger time frame vectors and took like a really large trim when we did actually start dumping, which is hilarious, right? Hindsight's 2020. But you could even see during RTH yesterday, we chose to ignore vector, and vector was completely ignored on this push down. So 2115 does not look good for how vector's been respected, so I'm going to continue to ignore it until we see price action behave otherwise. So on the 10 wave 15, so with that being said, right, 66.58 is in that 53 area that was the 7 wave 60. So I do like 53 to 58 so far for my probability rejection zone. So on our 10 wave 15, we're seeing again a similar story on our vector, right? Completely being disrespected. We've had a really flat vector, I would say all things considered. We've made a couple long waves and short waves, but hasn't really seen support or resistance. Had that big push above vector, and now we're kind of running away from it, getting into a little bit of an overextension territory. We got this 66.54.77, which again is in confluence with our IV walls, in confluence with our 20 wave 15, and in confluence with our 7 wave 60. So I'm really, really liking this for a rejection, especially because we have the 64.77 and an 2% odds of continuation on some of our smaller time frames. In terms of downside levels, we did end up actually filling a 7 wave 60 open state last night, super early. That was at 65.33. So I'm not really seeing too many downside levels, like I said, until we can see some type of respect on vector. So right now, I'm going to just go actually mark 53 to 58, and then we can start putting some detail around that 53 to 58 area because it looks really, really good right now. Let's go here, maybe, fill a rectangle. 53, 58. And then we can go obviously label all of our open states and things like that when we get there. Okay, cool. Back to fractals. Like that. I like that 55 with the open state. Okay, let's go to our 7 by 5 minute. Okay. A little bit of a similar story on our 7 by 5 minute on vector. You don't ever see these to be too dramatically disrespected just because the 7 wave 5 and the 50 wave 1 are such small time frames that like we just end up kind of making long waves and short waves if we do get into consolidation areas. One thing I do like about this is even though last night we did spend quite a bit of time just trading within our 50% odds, we finally did see a little bit of more volatility and started getting, back up to our 5% odds, which is kind of nice to see. We're currently really actually really low above pivot on our 7 wave 5, so we have a huge amount of opportunity to the upside on the 7 wave 5, which is nice to see. Um, you can notice here that we've made our open state from our previous long wave up at 66.41. 66.66 is the 2% odds, which is a little bit above our zone, but like this is quite below our zone. This is quite above our zone. So we can maybe mark that the 7 wave 5 has some levels up in this area, but I might actually wait to see if we get a little bit of revision to see if the 7 wave 5 minute kind of wants to be in that 53 to 58 zone. Because if we mark 66 or 41, that just makes our zone way too big. So, um, if you are practicing, very specific risk management, I would recommend you could potentially mark like the 66 zone. One of the reasons I don't love the 41's this 4173 zone is because it is the previous wave that we made. And like I think we talked about this yesterday a little bit, but like the newer the zones are, they're a little bit more disrespected. I mean, there's opportunities for like rejections. Like for example, when we made this open state at 6:15 this morning, we closed it at 7:30 and we did see a little bit of a push down, right? It went from what was it, 65.81 down to 65.67, so there was a little bit of an opportunity for a scalp there, but it wasn't really until this open state that we created maybe back here. This was yesterday. We respected this one a little bit more. And so these like super recent open states that are created in the prior like long wave or the prior short wave, I kind of want to ignore because they're not quite as powerful as some of these old ones. And I really like the 66.66 one because it's 431 periods old as opposed to this one that's 6 periods old. So I think the 66 one is higher probability level as opposed to 41, even though it is above our current gray box zone that we have mapped out. So let's go look at our 50 wave 1 to see if there's something in that zone. Hmm. Holy overextension. Look at this. 50 wave 1 minute super overextended. Yikes. Okay. 50 wave 1 minute's kind of the only thing in our story that's being overextended like that. Look at that. Super interesting, right? Let's go back to our 7 wave 5. Yeah, the 7 wave 5 is barely above pivot. Interesting. Okay, so the 50 wave 1 is on a tirade, which is fine. I'm going to end up ignoring it though, just because the only other confluence we have with the 50 wave 1 minute, being that overextended, I would argue, is the fact that we're really close to like the top, like our max range essentially. So, I'm not going to be looking for like any type of rejection based off of the 50 wave 1 minute just because it's so outlier compared to the rest of our areas. One thing I do want to do though is just go look at 4 days to load real quick and see if there's anything. So we do have an open state up at 66.20 after 4 days to load, which is well beyond our 2% odds. Let me just give us one more day to see if we can pull some information from yesterday. And one of the things I want to say about the 50 wave 1 probably and the reason why it's so overextended, which that doesn't even make sense actually. Yeah, the 6620. I was gonna say, I was like, we maybe want to try to grab some data from yesterday. But you can see, right? Our 50 wave 1 minute, we had this wild candle to the downside because that was that really strong move yesterday off of our 91 area that we marked. So we kind of have this crazy outlier from yesterday, but beyond that, um, the fact that we're so overextended up here is just kind of funny. I think I'm going to ignore the 50 wave 1 minute until we could potentially see a revision, uh, because we have a move to create a short wave and get below pivot, and then eventually back above pivot to see if we can have a little bit more opportunity for upside for some type of rejection. So let's go label our zones real quick. Um, so our 7 wave 60, we were marked at what was that? 66. What was it? Let me go back to my zones here real quick. Okay. So that was 66.53 was our 7 wave 60. So we're looking at this open state above our 10% odds. So I'm going to mark 66.53 as our 7 wave 60. Just put it here. And then we'll just label 7 wave 60 open state is there. And then we'll do, I think pretty much most of our zones had some sort of open state, which was really cool. Oh, look, here's one at 66.58 on the 20 wave. Wait, yeah, of course. Let me move this out of the way real quick. I need to move this open state up to 60. My brain is not processing here. So 7 wave 60, we had it at 53. The 20 wave 15, we have at 58. So let's make another little red line. Put it up here at 58. Okay, so that's kind of the top and bottom of our zone, which I like. So this is the 20 wave 15. And then that's also paired with the 2% odds, which I do like, and 2%. So let's mark that. And then it was our 10 wave 15 that had 66.54.75. So basically 66.55 more or less. So I'll put that 55, that's 54.75. There we go. So this was our, it's going to get really cluttered, which I like because we have a lot of stuff up here. This is our open state on the 10 wave 15 and a 2% odds. It's good to see. And then we had our 7 wave 5 minute, had a zone at, this was the, okay, so the 7 wave 5 minute was the zone that we had the 66 and the 41. So I think I'm going to mark this 66, which look, I already actually have a level right there. So I'm just going to keep that there. This is a really old level, but for some reason it's really respected. So I need to go back and see when I made this level to see what the heck it was because it's been pretty supportive and resistive for several weeks. Okay, so this is our 7 wave 5 minute open state, and this is a 2% odds as well on the 7 wave 5 minute. So I'm excited to see if the 50 wave 1 minute gives us a little bit of a downside revision um, to see if we have anything that lies within the zone. But I will definitely be taking shorts if we can get up here um, during New York session. And then I'm also going to be really just closely observing Vector to see if it ends up being respected and building some type of trend for us to trade off of during New York session as well. So one pretty simple zone. It was actually a really clear, nice, dense zone this morning, which I really, really like to see. So we've had a lot of volatility, a huge amount of range. So again, I would just practice really good risk management. The zone is actually pretty small. Um, so I mean, your position size could actually be pretty reasonable. Up here, we went easily full size at this zone yesterday, which was awesome to see as well. So, I mean, fractals are so powerful, guys. Like, even when you have crazy volatility, like you can still have really measured zones and potentially take full size plays to try to get some pretty big moves in regards to reversions from where we're actually trading. So last thing I'll say is mechanically, we traded pretty well last night. We broke above our yellow box. We had a yellow box win last night, which is good to see. And we bounced off of levels like pretty well. Like the bottom of average range was pretty supportive. The top of average range has been pretty resistive and then eventually supportive after we broke above it. So I kind of like how mechanically how we've been trading. I think our levels should react really well today. So I'm super excited to kind of see how the market plays out. So guys, trade safe. Happy Friday. Please check Forex Factory and This Year News to make sure that you're catching all the most recent data. But otherwise, if you guys are in Ascend Premium, we will be trading live in live voice here in about 30 minutes. Have a great day, guys, and have a really great and safe weekend. See ya.